And so first of all, thanks. Hey, thanks for coming. We're going to give you a little brief overview about who we are. And I think that's what kind of gets wrapped up into the question of the diversity of our student population. Cal Poly Pomona is a Hispanic serving institution. There's a large number of Hispanic students in the civil engineering department as well. And that applies also to our Asian population, our white population, and other races and ethnicities that we admit into the program. The civil engineering department is pretty typical of the rest of the Cal Poly campus, except for the female to male ratios, but that's typical of most engineering. In terms of engineering majors, ours usually has a higher percentage of females admitted compared to other engineering majors. That's probably the only other difference. And that's something that we're always working to do to help people realize this is a major for everybody, not just a certain group. The department size, we've been around 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 for a bit. We jumped up a little bit to just shy of, in 2020, up to just under 1,500 undergraduate students. We do have a pretty strong connection to our industry. Many of our alumni stay close and are leaders in companies nearby. And so in that case, we have a lot of connections to our industry, which is really great because they are also very excited about interacting with you and talking with you as you go throughout your degree program. They'll come on as guest speakers in various capacities. So, excuse me. Our class sizes is something that we like to talk about here at Cal Poly. When it comes to the Cal States, our class sizes are generally much smaller than the UCs. And as you can see from this chart, we're even typically more or smaller than other Cal States like Cal Poly San Luis Obispo or Cal State or San Diego State. Our class times run anywhere between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Although very few instructors teach at 7 a.m. So if you're already worried about that, it's not a typical thing. Most classes, the plurality of courses are run on Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the middle of the day. And we try to help that as much for students who want to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But there are classes held throughout the day, like it shows here, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. A typical lecture is somewhere between 25 and 45 students, and a laboratory somewhere between 15 and 24 students. So you get a bit more attention than many others do than other universities do. We try to do that so that we can stay connected to our students. And we don't have, as you can see, recitation sections, which is sections that are taught by TAs or graduate students. It is us, the instructors, who are doing the teaching. And a few of us, of the instructors, are here today to help answer questions and talk with you and get to meet you as well. So you get to meet some of us, and we'll be the ones interacting with you, not a graduate assistant or a teaching assistant. We talk about rankings. This is the token discussion about rankings to see if whether or not this is important to you. But a few rankings I think are that kind of catch my eye when I look at these as well, because as a parent of a college-bound student, social mobility, the number 10 or number 14 of most transformative colleges. That's from Money Magazine. Number 2 public university in the West. And then on the America's Best Value College, we're number 54. You saw some of this stuff in the college briefing, I'm sure. And then I just want to point out that we really are proud of our recognition of our civil engineering program and here at Cal Poly. And so we're really delighted that we get recognized for it. But really what I think the value that you're going to get out of this program is the connection that you have with your instructors and with each other and with industry here. And we try to be very conscious of that as we help guide you through this curriculum. So first big question for you. Here's a little trivia moment. Do any of you recognize this project? Do any of you recognize this project? You can put it in the chat. Do you know what project this is? Does anybody know? It's a stadium. Aaron says Ram Stadium. That's right. That's called the SoFi Stadium now because SoFi gave him lots of money. Now, the other big question is, what kind of engineers are needed to build something like this? What kind of engineers are used to build the Rams Stadium? Structural civil engineers. Yeah, it's got to be civil engineers. That's right. Interestingly, civil engineering is broken into many different areas, actually several different areas. So you have the structural engineers, of course, that help build the structure and design that. You also have the transportation engineers building the roadways and the parking lots around the structure. The geotechnical engineers helping to make sure that the soils are strong enough so that the building doesn't sink into the bottom of the earth, right? Geospatial engineers, these are the person who locate that object, that whole big building, and make sure that everything is built exactly where it needs to be built and is mapped properly. Then you have the water resource engineers. If rain falls on that building, does it cause flooding anywhere? And then you also have environmental engineers. Does the runoff from the site create contamination downstream? So in a nutshell, it really takes all kinds of different civil engineers to build this, and we provide you training in each one of these areas. And as part of this too, I just wanted to say that this building, this is SoFi Stadium, is one of the general contractors of this was Turner Construction, and one of our graduates from 2017, Vinny Marsala, was one of the superintendents on this job. And so it was really neat to see the updates that he would post on LinkedIn and see the progress of the SoFi Stadium through his eyes and through one of our alumni's eyes. And we're very grateful that for his effort and also all the efforts of those companies, those people that put that stadium together. Really excited to have that fun bit of infrastructure in our lives. So getting down to the nitty gritty in terms of who are we? What does it look like to go to class at Cal Poly? Now, obviously we can't go to class and be present today, but these small classrooms, like you said, are run by the faculty ourselves. We are there with you, helping you. And we don't delegate that responsibility to anybody else. So we have some of our instructors here, Dr. Palomo, environmental. This looks a bit like Neil Lynch, our materials guy, but I could be wrong. Might be older. Actually, no, that's Mikhail Gershfeld, isn't it? That's our structural professor, I think. And then Alan Eng, our geospatial professor. Hani Farhan, who just recently retired as our structural engineering professor. Dr. Shah Fairbank, who does water resources, and Dr. Perez, who's also on this call today doing structural testing. We really enjoy this job. This is fun for us, and having you in our classes and teaching you in our classes, that's really fun. I mean, I think all of us here would probably say we would teach for free, but we would have to charge for grading. That's all we'd ever charge for, right? So we really enjoy having you be there. So when it comes to laboratories where we get to do hands-on stuff with students, messing around in the hydraulics lab, pouring concrete and testing, doing slump tests on concrete, doing soil borings, taking survey data, structural testing in the structural lab, doing environmental testing, messing around with the sandbox to do the topographic mapping, live topographic mapping, or doing field studies. Whatever it is, these things are exciting for us, and we hope that that excitement gets conveyed to you as you go throughout your program. As part of your program, you all get to do a senior project. This is the culminating experience of all your courses. The idea behind it is that you get to do all of that coursework, which builds to doing some sort of dress rehearsal for professional work. In the class of senior project, there's a wide variety of things you can be doing. This particular project that's shown here was the project to map the brand new student services building on campus that just got finished. Everybody calls it, I call it the spaceship building because SSB, a lot of people call it the potato chip, the cloud, whatever they call it, different names. They're still trying to figure out which one sticks. But in this particular senior project, the students got to go through and map it as it was being built and then created their own renderings of the project in real time. And that was their senior project, to learn from how all that is doing. So yeah, you learn to use software that are typically used in a profession. That was a question from Kiani. Would you use any software programs during the class? Yeah, so during your curriculum, you will learn to use different softwares that we commonly use in practice. And then during your senior project, we're hoping that you'll have a very expert sort of feel for it that you can then bring into your senior project class. And yeah, thank you for our faculty that are on here answering the questions. I'll stop answering the chat so you can keep on going with that. Senior projects, another one, super fun senior project. I tell you what, the more visually appealing senior project you can do are all transportation related, it seems like, because you get to do all these fun interchanges and all these models and all the little cars driving. Me being a water guy, all my stuff gets buried underground. So I'm always trying to convince people like, see, underground, there is a pipe and it conveys water, right? So it's really exciting to show off some of the transportation projects that you do. So there's really fun stuff. We've had a partnership with the California Department of Transportation, or what we just call Caltrans, for many years. And Caltrans reaches out to us now on a regular basis and asks us, say, okay, here's another interchange. Here's another transportation project that we have. Do you have students who want to work on it? And we almost always have one or two projects coming from that. Same thing with Metro. So a number of our senior projects are sponsored by our industry partners. So you actually get to work on real world projects as you're cruising through your senior project experience before you graduate. And it is one of the highlights of your program, which we're always really excited about. So another trivia moment, everybody. Here we go. This one's going to be a little bit harder. Does anybody recognize this bridge? It is in Southern California. I'm going to give you that hint. What bridge is this? It might be hard. It's one that was recently completed in Southern California. So there really is only one of these, but you'd have to have watched the news and been a nerd like us to get excited about new bridges in Southern California. Or even know what city it's in. Lauren guesses Gerald Desmond with a question mark. No need to feel uncertain, Lauren. That is the correct answer. Good job. That is a Gerald Desmond Bridge, which crosses the entryway into the port of Long Beach in LA. So yeah, there are not many cable-stayed bridges in Southern California. In fact, this may be the only one.
Bridges.
So nice guessing. Good work. So yes, what kind of engineers are used to build a bridge? I'm going to give you a few that should be obvious. Structural engineers, right? Construction engineers, of course. Others? Others? What other kind of engineers might be used to build a bridge that we need? Environmental engineers need to be there. They need to be there because any alignment of a roadway needs to be checked for its environmental impact. So we often have environmental engineers or environmental scientists working on that. That's correct. Geotechnical. Yeah, those gigantic piers. Am I using the right word, Felipe? Piers, columns. This is me, the water guy, trying to teach you about structural anatomy. But these big tall thingies in the middle, which I'll call a column, right? Those things need to be pushed into the ground and held together, held in there by the soil. So the geotech needs to be there. Transportation engineers, of course, Taylor. That roadway, the size of the roadway, how big it needed to be, is got to be a transportation engineer involved. Environmental engineers, once again. We have geospatialists again, because that's got to be put in there. Geotechnical, and honestly, maybe less known as a hybrid profession that we have in civil engineering called coastal engineering. We actually do not have a specific program in this. It's kind of a hybrid between geotech and water resources and environmental. And I bring that up because one of our graduates, Melissa Hilsebeck from the class of 2015, graduated from our program and now works for the Los Angeles Port Authority. And her job is coastal engineer. So you can take this degree and build into it in a variety of different ways. And so there's more to civil engineering than the typical traditional civil engineering professions. And that's what we hope that we can prepare you for in this career that you're going to be getting into. Our program, we also really like being involved in the student competitions that exist out there. That involves building the steel bridge, which is a competition to build a steel bridge, fabricate a steel bridge, but also then assemble the steel bridge within a certain amount of time and then have it carry a certain load. Here's a picture of somebody working on that bridge where all the students learn to weld, they learn to do metal fabrication. It's really exciting for them. The Earthquake Engineering Research Institute, EERI, I believe, has a competition on designing a building withstand earthquakes. So they build these tall structures. They have a shake table underneath that rocks that building back and forth. And how does it resist? How does it deal with that? The concrete canoe, students build a boat out of concrete. Sorry, they built a boat out of canoe. Yeah, so I'm doing really great here. And then they paddle race it, right? And that becomes one of the events that we race against many of the universities in the United States. And then the GeoWall competition, students build a retaining wall out of fabric to see how well it goes. And then in construction as well, students in the construction competition compete against other schools across the country in the Associated Schools of Construction programs that do different various competitions related to construction, including this was the design build competition, and our team took first place last year, 2 years ago. So yeah, last year's pandemic time. No, this was last year. So yeah, this is last year because it was right before the pandemic happened. We also enjoy getting students involved in just organizations. These include the American Society of Civil Engineers, which is probably our largest organization on campus, but there are a variety of other student organizations, the Honor Society, Chi Epsilon, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the Women in Transportation Seminar, Engineers Without Borders. I'm forgetting tons of them here. California Water Environmental Association, the CalGeo, the CCAP, which is the Structural Engineers of Association of Cal Poly. So there are student clubs. We have probably the most amount of student clubs of any department in the College of Engineering to help you find a place where you can feel connected to your classmates. And we feel that is important for students. We feel that is an important part of your education to feel connected in this way. And it also helps guide what sort of extracurricular activities you get engaged in. And we feel like that really enhances your learning while you're here. And we really encourage you to get involved in these student organizations. So from us to all of you, we're really excited to have you come here. We hope to see you all standing here on the stairs of Building 17 with this graduation photo to where we all get to join with you in a few years. That you'll come here, you'll graduate with us, and we'll be all high-fiving you on the way out. And with that is the end of our prepared remarks. And we want to open it up to any questions you may have at this moment. And in that regard, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other better on the screen. And Nicholas is asking, how easy is it to switch majors within the engineering college? And if you're switching into an impacted major, does that make a difference? The answer is it's hard-ish, I'll say. If you have a really great GPA, not so hard. If you come to Cal Poly and you have a regular GPA, which is in the 2s, it could become harder. So switching majors isn't a big deal, but because our majors are impacted, we look at those change of majors really closely. We look at how much space we've got. And we are talking about your college GPA. So if you get admitted to Cal Poly, you have to stay that major for one semester at a minimum till you have a Cal Poly GPA. And then we can evaluate you if you want to change majors at that point. But it does happen. Lots of students do change their majors. They get an idea. They say, I want to be an engineer. I mean, I started off as an aerospace engineer years ago and switched into civil and finished that way. So changing majors isn't unheard of, and your freshman year is very, very similar among all of the engineering programs. What's the difference between structural and architectural? Well, I'm going to take a stab at this, but Felipe, you feel free to jump in here, Dr. Perez. So structural engineering and architects, and I guess this is also even better question for Dr. Salem, who's correct. You are also a licensed architect at this time now, as in addition to being a licensed engineer. So I'll let you describe the difference for us then.
No, have Felipe start first, and I'll chime in at the end. Go ahead, Felipe.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm a professor in structural engineering, so I guess that's why I'm fielding this question. Just in a nutshell, architects and engineers, they work closely, okay? But the difference is that an architect will interact with the client and get the overall picture of what it is that the client wants. So for example, let's build a parking structure here. Okay, great. So then the architect will come up with drawings that represent that structure that needs to be designed. And so then, just simplistically, the drawings get passed on to a structural engineer, and the structural engineer reviews those drawings that are just conceptual, and then builds the skeleton, so to speak, and assigns specific materials as well as cross sections, connections, details, so that the particular structure can resist vertical loads like gravity loads, for instance, cars, vehicular loads as well, earthquake loads, wind loads, etc. And so then the structural engineer is responsible for issuing drawings as well as a set of calculations and working with the city that is responsible for reviewing for compliance with codes. And yeah, and then the structural engineer also will participate during construction to answer field questions from contractors. So you can kind of think of it as the architect looks for the structure to look pretty, and then the structural engineer is basically responsible for building the skeleton for that, right? And also the architects, they have a lot of responsibilities. They are actually the main coordinators of the work. They deal with multiple disciplines.
All right, I think Dr. Perez explained really well in terms of the distribution of responsibility between the different professionals and they involved in designing the building or a bridge. In bridge, you get more structural than architectural, but the analogy that I like to use to distinguish between architect and structural engineer is the human body. If you looked at the human body, the outside, look, our skin, our faces, this is architecture, this is the architect. The structural engineer is the bones, okay, your backbone, your bones that make you stand up, right? What makes us move is our muscles. That's the mechanical engineer. Mechanical engineer is the one that designed the elevator, the conveyor system that move you into that building from one part to another. The electrical engineer or the computer engineer will be the brain and the nervous system that control, the communication in that building. So in any modern project, you don't have any one particular engineer. You got a team of engineers that working together on that. And as Dr. Perez said, usually the architect is the first, design professional that tackle the project, then distribute these tasks to different consultant. I would say it's easy for a structural engineer to become an architect, not the other way around, right? You need to be really rigorously trained in principle of statics and structural analysis that rooted in advanced math and physics, and it takes a lot of training to become a structural engineer. Where in architectural, it's a skill, it's a talent that you can acquire. So I'm an example of this. I had a formal training in engineering. I got my degree in engineering. Then I self-taught myself to become an architect. I really doubted to do the opposite, that you start as an architect and become an engineer. It's just because of the level of technicality that you have to go through. So to answer your questions, you can start as an engineer with us, okay? And then if you decide later on you want to be an architect, you can do that. All right.
Excellent. So we've been getting some questions into the chat. We've tried to answer a few of them. And I think Taylor's question about, or there was a question about the difference between mechanical and civil. I think Dr. Salem answered that very well just then. And there was, are there major classes available afternoons and evenings to complete a CE degree because Marco is working full time? In general, we have a schedule that does offer classes at a variety of times. And so you often can get many of your classes, the required ones, in the afternoons and evenings as well. Does the civil engineering in general or structural engineering rely on teach more on physics? We certainly build on physics, but once you get done with your physics class, we apply that to engineering principles, and then it becomes more engineering instruction than it does about the science of physics behind it. So if you like physics, you certainly can apply that joy here, but then we take it in a different direction once we start going. Let's see. Camille says, is that, no, that was Camille's question. So yeah, there you are. And I can see you, Camille. Good to see you, by the way. That there's, so what does the job outlook look like in 5 years? Is it recommended to step in the industry through internships? Internships are always recommended, I think. I had an internship throughout my undergraduate degree, and I found that that was the perfect complement to my engineering program. Now, of course, I got lucky. There's nothing smart about me in that regard. I just found a spot and they kept me, so that was really nice. A lot of students ask, when is the right time to go look for an internship? Now could be good, So you go look for them. If you find one, go do some CAD work here, or, even fetching cheese sandwiches at an engineering consulting firm makes sense because you got your foot in the door and you'll be learning from the engineers as you go along. In 5 years, Mohammed, I would say that over time, civil engineering, construction engineering jobs grow over time so long as there is credit available in the market. So the only 2 times in which throughout the country we've seen a contraction in civil engineering, construction engineering jobs has been in the Great Depression and the Great Recession, where we had limited access to capital for people to initiate large-scale public works projects, which is what our bread and butter is. So any of those other times, there's always been work for engineers in the US. It always steadily grows. So long as people are still having children and we're still bringing more humans into this world, we got to keep cleaning up their poo, and we got to keep delivering clean water, and we got to keep building bridges that they can drive over. I mean, all of that stuff still needs to be there. Houses for them to build in, Walgreens for them to shop at. So some good questions going in there. Let's see. Is it fair to say that the majority of construction and engineering jobs are learned by doing? So for me, that was how I learned, but I'm sure anybody else want to chime in on that question?
Kenneth, if I may, I just want to go back to the difference between the career perspective to engineering versus architectural other measure. So civil engineering in general is very steady, and it has actually a positive trend. The reason is that it's supply and demand. The number of engineers that are available in the market right now is, relatively speaking, less than the demand. So there is always a need. The salary perspective, our guys are doing relatively well, but you may want to compare it to computer, where they do have these spikes, but then it's a wave and it goes. But in civil engineering is always in demand. Their salary might not be as high as a computer engineer at the beginning, but the computer engineer will have a good 5-10 years, and then they switch major and come to us because there's not that many jobs out there. Same thing with aerospace. So I want to say we are in a steady industry, and Dr. Lam explained it very well. Why? Because there is always need for this infrastructure. Now, I want to make a comparison between engineering and architectural. Architecture is a noble profession. Everybody want to be and like to be called architect, but it's like firefighter. It's a job that there's a lot of people want to do it, and it's a great job. But the salary of this is very low, just because, again, the supply and demand. A lot of people want to be firefighter, right? And there's a lot of them that want to apply for that job, and that drive the salary down. Same thing apply to architects. If you compare the salary of an architect after 5 years of school compared to a freshman of civil engineering or even construction engineering, there is a big difference. There is a big delta in favor of civil engineering. And again, just because of supply and demand, there is not enough engineers, and there is a lot of architects out there. So I hope that answered the question before.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mohammed's asking a professional licensure question earlier, and you to become a professional engineer requires a degree plus work experience. And in the state of California, that degree, we take the fundamentals of engineering exam. That's your test that you take usually in your final year at Cal Poly. Couple years of experience, 2 years of experience in California, and then you can take the professional engineering licensing exam. So becoming a professional engineer is more than just college, which is why I brought up the internship experience, because that really does help prepare you for your licensure. Kiani's asking for the internships. Would we work for a company or a city? Does it depend on the internship in general? You can work for either, Kiani. You get a lot of experience from both. Sometimes there's cities doing a lot of in-house design. Other cities are just doing a lot of in-house management of projects. So you get experience in both. Both matter, I guess, into your career. So I think they're all very valid to that. So yeah, and Dr. Perez is adding to that. So and Lauren asking, do I know of any? I'm not sure right now, but as we get them, they come up every so often, and we forward those immediately to the students in our classes and to all of civil engineering students and construction engineering students. So Cobb is saying, oh, good. You said I'm in ACE mentoring and it is such a great program. Oh, good. And learn so much. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to get connected to civil engineering and to student clubs, and doing that is very helpful. I guess getting involved now isn't a bad thing by any means, and how to get that mentorship. Because we started late, I don't know how long we want to go, but I think we're all content to be here for a bit. Nicholas is saying unrelated to CPP, but if you get your degree from outside California, then come back, is there a path to become licensed in California? Are there any exceptions to this? Oh, certainly. If you have a bachelor's of civil engineering from any university in the United States that was accredited, you can come back to California and take the professional engineer's license exam here. And in general, too, you can become licensed in another state and then transfer that license to California after you do some additional testing. Here in California, you have to pass a seismic engineering test as well as a surveying engineering test. So once you've done those, you can become licensed here if you're licensed someplace else. Yeah. So generally, most states allow you to kind of take your license and port it to different states, so you don't have to redo that whole process all over again. We're not like doctors. I feel bad for doctors and lawyers who have to like retake the bar exam or whatever in their states where they're at. It's like, yeah, it's pretty easy. In fact, a lot of engineers end up working in multiple states. So it's very common for some engineers to be licensed in California, Nevada, and Arizona, because so many of our companies are operating in all of those states. Or, if you're in Texas, you're also working in Oklahoma and Louisiana. And so that's very common. I knew a guy that was licensed in every single jurisdiction in the US, which is 52. Every state plus DC plus Puerto Rico. And he carried around this. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous because you're not doing business in all 52 all the time. And he's paying renewal fees for each one of these all the time. I'm sure he's paying $10,000 a year probably on just renewal fees. It was ridiculous, but he just carried around like that was some big honor prize of his. He's like, I'm licensed in every jurisdiction in the US. I was like, well, good for you, but if that's a goal, I mean, that must've been a goal of his, and he's feeling really accomplished. So he did it. So there you have it. So yeah. I'm just waiting for more questions. I'm kind of out of jokes for the minute right now. There's only so many that come out of me at any given moment. I have to breathe in and breathe out, that kind of stuff. So you go ahead and ask questions as they come up, and we're happy to answer them. Ali, did you want to say something? Dr. Shafi.
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm Ali Shafi, professor in the civil engineering department. I teach geotechnical engineering. So, whenever I want to, start, teaching one of my, geotech classes or foundation classes, So, I got my PhD from UCLA, and I ask always from my students, do you guys know what's the difference, the big difference between UCLA and Cal Poly Pomona? And then I bring up an example. So, I had advanced foundation engineering at UCLA, and I got A+. For my very first job, right? I had to design piles for California high-speed train project. And then my boss, he told me that, okay, so Ali, go ahead and design those piles based on the AASHTO code. AASHTO is a code that they use in transportation project. And I didn't have any idea, right? Because I hadn't learned how to do the design based on the codes. But here in the Cal Poly Pomona, right? So the school, you look at the name, it's Polytechnic, California State's Polytechnic. So we are obliged to train practical engineers, right? We are, I guess, the largest civil engineering program in the nation, and we have a very large alumni. And I receiving emails and texts in my LinkedIn that ask from the professional that I don't know them, hey, we're looking for the students. Send us the students for internship, for job, right? So here, the big difference from Pomona with other schools, that here we train practical engineers. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Shafi. Appreciate that. There's one question that came in that I didn't answer. I think we were answering. Here we go. How do you decide the specific path you choose within civil engineering? That happens as you grow in the program. And as you get to know the professors and the different projects that they do, you can choose different elective courses that give you more experience in transportation or structurals or geotech or water, or environmental or construction. So you develop that as you go along. So certainly if you're like, I didn't realize there's this many choices to civil engineering, I didn't either. So I just wanted to learn however whatever came up. So we had some other questions come in, which was, are there any specific books on building, civil engineering, or architecture you would recommend as an interesting and informative read? Oh, good question. Camille, I'm a fan of David McCullough, who is a historian who writes a lot of history books on different things. When David McCullough started his career, he was very much a civil engineering historian. He wrote a book on the Johnstown flood, the Panama Canal, and the Brooklyn Bridge. All of those are fantastic books to understand civil infrastructure and project management and leadership and the people who do these things. Are really compelling stories. I don't know if anybody has any other suggestions there.
I want to also suggest Cadillac Desert. It tells the story of water resources engineering in the Southwest. And by the way, I'm Dr. Ali Sharbat, and I'm in the area of environmental engineering. I started my career as a civil engineering, like many of you are about to do it. And I was very interested in structure and geotech and all the fun stuff. And as I learned more through my career, I felt like there's a lot of need for the environment. So we definitely need to pay attention to the environment and to as you see climate change and global warming. I'm not afraid. I mean, and these are the stuff that is you can follow up as you start in the civil engineering program. The name of our program is civil engineering, but as Dr. Lam said, there's a lot of branches that you could do in your career.
And since we've been introducing each other, Dr. Wu, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe give a recommendation for a book as well?
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, maybe. My name is Jae Young-woo. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, and my area is construction management and construction engineering and management. so I teach a variety of subjects like in that area, like estimating, scheduling, project management, or labor productivity, something like that. I'm looking for one book, but I cannot recall the exact name. But there's a book like from the architectural drawing to the building, how to build a build a house. But I cannot find that book. And another book is the jump starts of the project management or 101 case studies in construction management, like this book. Then you can see a variety of cases from the contracting or project delivery method to the operations and maintenance as well. So you will have a variety of cases, real world like cases, then you will taste what are the typical dilemmas, what are the typical issues on site as a project manager, as a construction engineer, then you will taste about it. Thank you.
Excellent. I do want to acknowledge that we intended this this event to go till 12:30, but because we started late, we're content to stick around a little bit longer. But we also want to recognize that your time, you may feel like you need to leave, and that is okay. So if you have reached your maximum and are content with the information you've received today, feel free to log off. It's okay. If you have more questions, please stick around. We'll stick around until there's like two of us awkwardly staring into the camera, and then we're like, okay, we got to quit this right now. But anyway, we're happy to have you and have you ask any questions that you've got. Of course, thank you. Please go attend that other event. Nicholas, thanks for coming. Thank you, Taylor, you're welcome. Omar, you're as well welcome.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And certainly as people get down to less and less numbers, maybe all of a sudden they'll be like, okay, now I'm ready to unmute and talk. So feel free to be that person too, as we get down to smaller groups.
Hello, everyone. I know I ask a lot of questions.
Quite all right.
Yeah, but I just had a question back in my mind that I was leaning more towards structural before I took statics. And while I'm taking statics right now, I'm from Cerritos College, and I will be transferring next year. But by looking at the structures that we deal with, and trusses, cables, machines, frames, it kind of demotivated me, like, to not pursue a narrow down subdiscipline in structural. So that's why I was so confused to decide a subdiscipline in civil engineering, because as a transfer student, as a community college student, there are no specific civil engineering classes are taught, but just general classes like statics, dynamics, strength of material. So how do you actually decide, how do you develop interest in say transportation, say geotechnical, say environmental, say structural?
Please go ahead, Dr. Salem.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. May I ask what demotivate? Is it the topic itself or the teacher? And feel free. I mean, it's only what says here is don't stay in Zoom. So because we all have our fair share of bad teacher in our life. I can name few, and I mean, in some occasion I have, the feeling that I need to write letters to my students in some classes that I didn't feel that I did what I was supposed to do. So if you let us know, was it the teacher or
not really a
mm-hmm.
Teacher tries their best, but I think it's just learning on online environment. It's more visualized. You have to more visual. Trust it. You have to more look at the frames in a different angles. Now learning, online environment, it kind of the purpose was, the purpose of a statics is to actually teach you the rigid bodies and the internal and external forces. But I think what kind of demotivating me is the online environment.
Mhm.
And engineering is something we're very visual people. We like to see things work.
I was going to say, I'll have Dr. Beres. He's one
that's
of our
what
top-notch,
demotivates.
structural, professors, and I'll let him take the conversation from there. Go ahead, Flippy.
Yeah, I agree with Mohammed that it is challenging to convey some ideas via a virtual environment. But something that I've done here is I have a whole bunch of little models and stuff, and now I have to turn off my background the way that I normally do in my class lectures for you to see that. So something like this. This would be the setting, right, for my classes, and so then we talk about different, like you were saying, connections, different members. So I try to bring the 3D visualization to you here by using 3D printers, for instance. Just a bunch of little tinker toys that I have here. I've, for example, created connections. So you talk about free body diagrams, right? So you have a beam and a column and a connection. So you break off the beam, you break off the column, and you break off the joint. And so I could also illustrate different types of behaviors, bending behavior, etc. And so I think it is challenging, but at the same time, it offers us opportunities to kind of incorporate these hands-on tools. That's actually one of the reasons I really enjoyed structural engineering is that it's visual. I can see it. Whereas, for example, electrical type of careers, I'd have to imagine current flowing and whatnot. And of course, you'd feel it if you touch something in the wrong way. But I think it's something that I found appealing, that I could visualize. But let me just not try to address the whole structural and what discouraged you from pursuing structural. I think if anything, Cal Poly Pomona offers a general civil engineering degree, which allows you to experience different types of courses or topics within civil engineering. And assuming that you're not completely decided by the end, I mean, hopefully by the end of your career here, you have kind of an inclination as to what you prefer to do. But even if you don't, the benefit of our degree is that it's so general as a civil engineering degree that you can work in different areas of civil engineering. So you can try out structural. If you don't like it, then you can do land development, you can do transportation, you can definitely do a lot of things. And then once you discover that niche that you really like, at that point, I would recommend then pursuing additional studies. You can go back to grad school if you'd like, and then focus on that part of civil engineering. So that's, I think, one of our biggest selling points here is that we offer a curriculum that is general. In fact, we have a general civil engineering option. You don't have to specify a transportation option or anything, or not that we have a transportation option, but you don't have to specify any particular course or topic within civil engineering. We offer the different courses for you. You can get a general degree. I hope that helps. So Mohammed, you don't have to say, I'm going to civil engineering because I want to do structural. You don't have to make that decision now. Wait until you take my classes and then you can.
Wow.
This is what I was going to say, Flippy. That's exactly what I was going to say.
It's funny.
Well, it's funny. I don't want to, I know this is being recorded, but we also teach students from other departments, right? In our statics classes and whatnot. And one of the really great parts of the feedback that I get that I feel really excited about is that students from other departments start inquiring, how do I get into your program? Because I really want to pursue this this topic in the future, and I want to do structural just like you. And it's not like I'm doing it on purpose to try to bring students from other departments, but it's certainly flattering. So anyway, I'm not the only one. There's a whole panel of professors here who are great professors, and also professors who couldn't join us today, who are super dedicated to what we do. And we all have a passion for our niche, but we all work collectively together as well in a very productive manner. And so our goal is not to say, oh, I'm trying to pull students to be structural. We want you guys to represent Cal Poly once you graduate and represent all of us collectively as a department, as a unit.
You know, it's funny because I had an alumni come back, and she was giving a presentation, and after the presentation, I talked with her and said, I was like, what are you doing now? She goes, oh, I'm in transportation. She goes, I'm in transportation because of you, Dr. Lam. And I said, how did I do that? And she goes, because I took your water class and you told me that story about how all your infrastructure gets buried and nobody sees it. And she goes, I don't want to do that. I want to build something that people see. So she goes, that changed my, so I convinced somebody to move out of water engineering. Yeah. So yeah, Marco, and just like you said, construction management is in our department, but it is a separate bachelor's degree, completely separate from the civil engineering degree. But the first 2 years of construction engineering management and civil engineering are basically the same. You know, there's very minor differences between the two. So you do a lot of similar things. But it is a separate bachelor's of science degree at Cal Poly, those two degree programs. Yeah, I've been joining these questions. They've been good questions. There've been a lot of them, a lot of good interaction, by the way. So thank you.
Hi there, Kenneth. I find it a little bit easier just
I
to.
don't quite speak to going back to school just yet. I'm still
Good,
just
hold on. Go ahead, Marco.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Just to follow up on the construction management question, I've been looking at your guys' website for the requirements for civil engineering for transfer students, and I was wondering, are the requirements similar to construction management to transfer to that degree?
No, to transfer into construction engineering management, they're different in terms of GPA. But otherwise, I think they're the same. It's just the GPA requirement is different. I'm scratching my head, but yeah, Dr. Salem is nodding. I think the only difference is that they want you to have a 3.0 to transfer into civil, and then a 2.5 to transfer into construction engineering management. Actually, I don't even think it's that, is it? Scratching my head.
There is no GPA requirement for construction management. It's the impacted program that requires 3.0 plus passing calculus 1 and 2 with C or higher grade. Where construction management is not impacted. So if you make it to Cal Poly, then as long as you finish about 50% of your no, I'm not saying it right. As long as you finish 2 years of your college credit, then you are eligible to transfer.
And then thank you for that answer. And then for instance, like you guys are mentioning, if you change your mind once you are there to transfer to engineering, is that something that can still happen so long as you meet the minimum requirements? I'm not trying to find like a back door or anything.
Yes, I think you answered it. As long as you meet the requirement, because we need to be fair. I mean, there is a lot of students that are applying for this, and there is a lot that, there are, here and there are always, we form a panel and look for special cases. But in general, yes, I mean, just out of fairness, you need to meet the requirement, which is 3.0 plus passing calculus. So what students done in the past, and Professor Lam advised cases like this in the past, is if you're passionate in civil engineering, we wanna give you that second, that chance. So take classes, and other program, do really well, raise your GPA, right, and then we'll look at it. We're not gonna say no. Look at it, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I always forget those details. That one, for some reason, I'm mixing it up. But there are websites with this information, Marco. I promise. I have found them in the past. So if you do want to get reminded of those facts later and you forget to jot them down now, it is on our website. What are the admission, the transfer, and then the change of major requirements as well are all there on the website. All right.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed interacting with the faculty and all the prospective students. I have to step out now, but it was definitely a pleasure. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a lot of these students in our classes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, professors. Really appreciate your responses.
Mhm.
You're welcome, Hamid. Well, I think maybe it's probably good for us all to probably check out. Maybe that's why Mac is here. He's here to tell us to cut it off. They got to move on with life, huh, Mac? Is that why you're here? So he's probably busy, but
Yeah.
probably a good time for us to move on anyway for the rest of the day, right? I don't know if there's
Yep.
any other closing thoughts, Dr. Salem.
No, thank you. It went very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for all our students, and we look forward to see you in our classes. And thank you for our colleagues who took the time from from their family to be here to introduce our department to our students. Thank you very much. I'm personally grateful for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much too, gentlemen, for all your time and your
Bye-bye.
insight.
You're welcome.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you.